A few months after beginning his notes and initial research in London, Stoker visited a place that was to have a profound effect on his fledgling novel. Situated on the edge of the North York moors, Whitby is a charming fishing port at the mouth of the River Esk, and has changed very little since Victorian times. In Stoker's day, life in the town revolved around the sea. It was a centre for shipbuilding. Whalers would sail from the port and return months later with cargoes of meat and oil. As a young man, Captain Cook learnt his craft in the town, and dotted around the harbour were sailmakers, fish markets and smokehouses. When he arrived in Whitby to begin his annual summer holiday in July 1890, Stoker made his way to a small guest house in Royal Crescent, which was run by Fanny and William Harker, a surname which he later used in the novel. The house is still here, and its connection with Bram Stoker is now commemorated with a plaque. During his holiday, Stoker would frequently sit at one particular seat on the West Cliff and take in the wonderful view of the town. From his vantage point, he had a fantastic vista of the East Cliff, including St. Mary's Church with its atmospheric graveyard, and the foreboding outline of the ruin of Whitby Abbey.
During the summer of 1890, Stoker took his wife Florence and his son Noel to the seaside town of Whitby, the northeast coast of England, for a summer holiday. Whitby at that time was essentially a resort town, very popular with Londoners who wanted to get away from the city but didn't want to go over to the continent. When Stoker went to Whitby, he had already been working on the very early notes for Dracula, and when he got to Whitby, I think he was just overwhelmed by the place and decided that it would play a major role in his novel. Whitby gave Stoker all kinds of material for his novel, as shown in his notes. There are 30 pages of notes on Whitby in his collection of notes for Dracula. Weather conditions, a little account of a Russian schooner that had gone aground 10 years earlier, the local dialect which he works into the novel, and perhaps most important, it was in Whitby where he found the name Dracula.
This restaurant was once the town's library and bathhouse, and it was here that Stoker found this book, an account of the principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia by William Wilkinson.
While Stoker was in Whitby in the summer of 1890, he came across the name Dracula. He had already selected a name for his vampire, Count Vampire. But when he went to Whitby, for some reason or another, he borrowed this book from the Whitby Public Library, which was an old history book of Romania, of what's now Romania. And in it, he found a reference to a 15th century ruler named Dracula, who fought against the Turks and crossed the Danube River in his fight against them. That's all that was in it, except a footnote saying that Dracula in the Wallachian language means the devil. That's why Stoker picked the name. He copied that footnote into his notes in capital letters. He didn't know very much about the real Dracula, only the tiny bit of information that was in this book. Stoker liked the name Dracula. He went back to his notes, changed all the Count Vampires to Count Dracula. We can see how he actually makes the change.
During his holiday, Stoker naturally spoke to many of the townsfolk. Like all good writers, the stories he heard were all stored for possible later use in his work. This building, which now houses the Dracula Experience, was once the sea captain's reading room, and it was here he heard a collection of stories from an old sailor. This real-life seaman later became the character of Mr. Swales, with whom Mina chats in the novel.
While he was in Whitby, Stoker had a look at a Coast Guard report, and there was a brief account of a Russian schooner called the Dimitri, which had run aground in 1885. And this gave Stoker his idea for how to get Dracula into England. And in his notes there's even a little sketch in which he draws out the different geographical regions around Whitby and has a little boat drawn to show the Demeter, as he calls it in the novel, coming onto Tate Hill Sands. And then when the schooner runs aground in the novel, Dracula escapes from it in the form of a large dog and runs up the cliffside, up to the graveyard up by St. Mary's Church. Now there's nothing in the notes about where Stoker got this idea for using a dog, but there is a local legend in Whitby about the barghest, the howling of which would indicate imminent death for the person who hears it. As Stoker was there for a few weeks, he may very well have heard that legend and decided to use the dog as the means of Dracula's entry.